Hello and welcome to the Game Changers podcast, where you'll hear from extraordinary, trailblazing women in sport. I'm Sue Anstiss, a founding trustee of the Women's Sport Trust charity and the founder and CEO of Promote PR, one of Britain's leading sports PR agencies. In this episode, my very special guest is Lauren Steadman, Paratriathlon world champion and Olympic silver medalist. Lauren also enthralled us all last year as a finalist in BBC's Strictly Come Dancing. I started the interview by asking Lauren about her earliest memories of sport growing up.
I've been active since I think I could walk. You know, every kid grows up, and obviously kids are kids, they always pick on the mean one or someone that's different. And having one hand, kids used to be like, I don't know, get chosen last for the sports teams, and you know, I always felt a bit left out. So I made sure that, you know, with sport, I played on the football team at school, the hockey, the netball, did as much sport as I could, just to show all the other kids, you know, I'm missing an arm, but I can do just as good as you can. And I think it was for myself as much as the other kids. And swimming was something my grandma taught me, and I was at primary school, and the teacher said, I need someone to do the local district swimming competition. And no one put their hand up, and I felt really sorry for our teacher. So I said, I'll do it, I can swim. And I went there, and at the competition, the ex-head of British Disability Swimming just happened to be there. She had a local academy, and obviously she saw me, and then she came to speak to my parents and said, I think, you know, Lauren actually has a skill here, she could go really far. Have you heard of disability swimming? And at that point, me and my parents hadn't. So I went and did like all the Kellogg's levels that you do with her. And then I went and did my first disability competition. I was about 11 years old. I was really scared. My dad came all the way up to the beginning of the race with me. And then I sort of got scouted. And within 6 months, I was on the British Disability Development Programme. Wow. And was doing my first international when I was 12 in Denmark. And I got my first gold medal. And once you have a taste for what it's like up in elite sport and international, it went from there. But yeah, sport has been in everything I've done in my whole life.
And so it's fantastic to hear at school as well. You didn't have people putting you off or telling you couldn't do things. It was yourself, you think, that pushed yourself forward to try everything?
Yeah, I think myself. And I have to give my parents probably the biggest amount of credit I could ever give them, because Mum said that when I was growing up, it was very easy to want to help me. She said, even when you've got a child with two hands, you just want to do something for the child if they're struggling. But she said, I would leave you until you really couldn't do it and you'd exhausted all avenues in which to achieve what you were trying to do. One of them she always tells me about is shoelaces. You would try and try. So we would just put you in the car with your shoes in the end, and you'd be in the back of the car trying to do it. Yeah. But that installed, I would say, determination. But everyone else says I'm really stubborn. But I think I have to prove it to myself. Even today, like if there's something I can't do and someone says, do you need a hand? I'm like, no, I'm going to do it myself. And I think that's what made me go through life being, I'm going to prove to myself, prove to others. And when I was younger, I probably would have taken another hand if someone said, I can give you a hand, because you don't like to be different. Kids, it can be quite ruthless when you're going through primary school and stuff. But now, if you said, Lauren, here's a hand, I'd be like, I really don't want it. Well, I can do everything you can do without it, and it makes me who I am. So self-acceptance, I think.
Absolutely. Were your family sporty? Do you have a sporty family?
I wouldn't have said sporty to the standard that I am. But every weekend was, let's go out, let's walk the dogs, let's play football out the front. We weren't allowed PlayStations, and we weren't allowed to watch Simpsons. So it was always, you know, you've done your homework, so now you can go outside and play before dinner. And I loved it. Rollerblades, making dens. I was always very active outside. So I'd say in that sense we were sporty. But other than that, my mum and dad just wanted me to make my own choices in paths I took. And I can say that swimming and triathlon, my whole Paralympic career has all been from me, not from them. I've never been pushed, it's always been in my own choice.
And you've obviously made some big sacrifices to compete at that level and so young.
Yeah, there's been a lot of sacrifice. And at first, but again, when you are younger, you think in your head, should I be doing this? Is this what I want? But I can say that having stood, you know, as a world champion with the national anthem playing, with the gold medal, you sort of in that moment go, do you know what, I know what I sacrificed everything for, all of the long hours, all of the tears, the sweat. It was worth it for this one point. And I think you have to realise that I've got years ahead of me when I'll be like probably a parent and an older lady who has her regular glasses of red wine and goes out. Like that's something that I can do for the rest of my life. But my body will not be what it is now. So probably the biggest sacrifice was I went away to boarding school at 14, and I feel as though I made that choice because obviously I wanted to, have a successful career, manage my academics alongside sport.
And was that why you did that?
Yeah, my dad has his own company and I've got a younger sister, so driving 45 minutes to the local pool morning and night was tiring the whole family out. Whereas when I moved to, it's now Mount Kelly College down in Devon, it was 100 metres, my bed from the swimming pool. So I would get up, I'd go swimming, then I'd go straight to school. And it made my whole career a lot easier because I could manage all of it. But I missed out on family time. I missed growing up with my sister, friends going out the weekend. There was a Woolworths in Tavistock, but that was about it. I didn't, there was no going out to the late night cinemas, or there wasn't even, you don't have a nightclub. I think there's a Wetherspoons now, but when I was there was, just cups of tea. So in that sense, but when I look back, it's fondest memories that I have, so...
And what advice would you give to young athletes now in that situation that you were? Because we hear a lot about girls at 13, 14, dropping away from sport.
Yeah, I think my advice for any young girls is don't be too hard on yourself for a start. Like, if there's something you want to do, you do it because you love to do it and you want to do it. Same whether that's choosing a sport or choosing what you're going to study at school. There's certain things you think, I should study this. If you don't love what you do, it becomes a chore. Whereas if you love what you do, you just do it day in, day out, and you have a passion for it. And I'd say it is a tough world out there, but you've got to learn to be tough. Like, there have been so many times that I've been knocked down and I thought, this is really, really tough. But then when you achieve something, the satisfaction is overwhelming and it drives me to then want to achieve the next step. So for any young girl out there, attack it with everything you have.
Fantastic advice. And how old were you when you went to your first Paralympics?
I was 15 all those years ago. I feel really old now. Someone said to me the other day, this is your 4th Games coming up. And I was like, yeah, it makes me sound really old. But at 15, I managed to, I qualified when I think I was 14. And then by the time I was there, I was 15. But it was overwhelming. And within the 6 months of going to the boarding school, I had to drop around 7 seconds in order to qualify. So it was a tall order, but I managed to do it, and I still remember to this day, like, I can sit here with numerous world titles and everything, but that was possibly my favourite moment in my sporting career, was touching the wall and hearing the commentator say, Lauren Steadman, lane 4, has qualified. Like, it gives me shivers now, because it's just like the first time you ever achieved something. Bit naive once I got to Beijing. I came away 9th, so I was a bit disappointed, and we had such a successful team. You see everyone get the gold medals and you think, I've not delivered for my country. But I decided that actually it's not a failure. I learnt from it. It gave me experience to go forward for 4 years, ready for London. And yeah, I didn't look back, and I learnt a lot. When you're so young, it's overwhelming. The whole going to a big Paralympic Games, even the village itself is amazing. So yeah, I took forward something to learn from it, and I think that's helped sculpt the rest of my career.
I was going to come on to ask to what point you then transitioned across to triathlon. What was your decision there?
So I had 4 years in between Beijing and London, and I really wanted to go and correct everything that I hadn't managed to achieve in Beijing. I'd qualified for Beijing 106, 1 minute 6 seconds for 100 free. For 4 years, everything I did, I was 4 years stronger, smarter, wiser, slept well, all the physio, all the, everything you could do, I did. And it was still 106 4 years later. Wow. Every single race was 106. And I was training really fast. Why couldn't I get under 106? So I didn't actually qualify for London. But British Swimming had seen the training times and they were like, we might need it for the relay. Here's a wild card. So I got to go and relive all the events that I did in Beijing. And I said to a teammate that actually, we just raced at the weekend, Claire. I said, Claire, I do not mind what this race is, as long as it's a 105.99. And it was 105.98. And I was like, oh my gosh. But for me, being an athlete, you go from going to the Paralympics, getting a gold medal, to qualifying for events, to getting a PB. But when you lower your standards, all that suddenly mattered to me was to get a PB. That had become my gold medal. So I had achieved what I believed I really could achieve in swimming.
Physically?
Yes. Yeah. I'd exhausted every avenue possible. So my uncle, keen age group triathlete, said, do you know what? Swimming's a part of a triathlon. You're great at swimming. Why not try triathlon? You're a good swimmer, but you might be a better triathlete. So straight after London, got on a plane to New Zealand. 5 weeks later, represented British triathlon. Come 5th in the world there, due to food poisoning.
At Wellington?
Auckland. Yeah,
Okay,
it was up there. So I was young, excited, learnt to ride a bike, had a brakes adapted, never run in my life, or when you're at school, but not competitively. And then decided, you know what, I love the 3 disciplines. I love what triathlon gives you. I'm going to go for it, and then never look back.
That's amazing, isn't it? So did you miss that difference in training? And it's
very, very hard. Swimming is very regimented and focused. So you get up in the morning 5 till 7, you have all day, then you go back in the evening. It's very disciplined. Triathlon, it's more relaxed. Sometimes in my head I thought it was more complicated because obviously you can swim open water, you can swim the pool, you can bike indoors, you can bike outdoors, you can run indoors, you can run outdoors. So it was all sort of a bit hectic for me in my head. And with triathlon, being a full-time athlete now, I'm flexible on my timetable. I'm not around school hours or swimming coaches and stuff. So the one thing I love now is that it's flexible. I can choose what I do when I do it, as long as I've spoken to the coach, of course. I wouldn't want to upset him. But that was the hardest bit for me, was going from a sport that was so regimented to one that's relaxed, and combining 3 sports. Because you'd be like, well, I've done cycling this week, or should I have done more running? But you have to trust the process, and that after a whole year's worth of training, it will all come together.
And you alluded to your kind of quite rapid success, but you had the most amazing first year in triathlon.
Yes, I did. So I did the race and I came 5th, thought, I've got something here. Going round into next year, we went into Japan to race, and it was the 4 times world champion Faye. She was also British. Went to Japan. My swim background got a fantastic lead, got a minute's lead. Got into transition, and you guys would put on a helmet and you just clip your helmet up. Well, I couldn't do it. And at this point, I've solved that problem now. I have a magnetic clip. But I lost a minute in transition to her, so we went out on the bike together. Did the whole race together, and she just picked me at the end on the blue carpet. But in my head, I did some maths. If I hadn't have fumbled for a minute, and she caught me by 10 seconds on the run, I could possibly have won that race. And that was all I needed in my head to give me the confidence and belief in myself, in my body, in my muscles. And 3 weeks after that, I beat her by 3.5 minutes and was undefeated for nearly 2 years. So obviously within the swimming and that, I'd lost confidence in my abilities and something was blocking me. But I managed to release that in triathlon and learn to believe in myself and trust the process.
And you're clearly a magnificent swimmer, and I know it's not always enough in triathlon, as I found out, but often it's the stronger runners that kind of come through at the end. Is that the same in paratriathlon or not so much?
Definitely. I think within my category, you can definitely see that. We often come out of the water together now. We've managed to, everyone around the world's managed to bring their swimming up to pretty elite standard. We're going out onto the bike, and at the moment you're seeing sort of me and Claire leading the way, driving the British flag forwards, and the girls are possibly putting a couple of seconds into us on the run, but the run does come through. It's a pretty even race at the moment. Me and Claire were separated by less than 3 seconds just gone at the weekend, so it's getting pretty competitive out there. But definitely most triathletes that you speak to will say that they do not like the swimming part, and once they're on their bike they feel happy, and then their legs really hurt on the run. That's a standard how triathlon is summed up, I think.
And you mentioned briefly the transition, the 4th discipline of triathlon. How else have you adapted your transitions?
So I don't have too many adaptations. So obviously come in from the swim, getting a wetsuit off with one hand can be tricky, but I make sure there are loads and loads of lube and baby oil all over, so it slips off pretty quickly. Obviously my helmet, it's got a magnetic clip. I do still wear prosthesis when I race, I've got pretty nifty now at putting the sleeve on, then putting the arm on, and I've managed to do a flying mount, which for those that don't know, it's you're running with the bike and you just jump and hope that you land on it. And my shoes are both on there, so that's sorted. And then the only other adaptations that I have would be on my bike, and that is both brake cables go into one lever, so that I brake equally on the left side, and electric gears that allow me to just shift all on the left side. And I don't like to have too many adaptations because I'm pretty stubborn that way. But yeah, that would be about it.
And you managed to juggle amazingly your education along with your training. Was training full-time an option you took seriously when you were studying?
So since the age of 14, when I went to that boarding school, I have always maintained a full-time athletic career. And again, credit to my parents. My dad said, you will not always be an athlete, so you do need to focus on your academics. Your body will not be able to do what it does for years to come. So I was always pushed to make sure that I achieved the best at school. I managed to get really good GCSE and A-level grades, and then came around the big university. Went to Portsmouth University. They were fantastic in helping me manage my, I suppose, career in swimming and also lectures. They would sometimes send me lectures that I hadn't been able to attend with a voice note over of all of what was said so I can make my own notes. Switched a couple of exams to coursework. I remember the year of London itself, I was in South Africa. It was, it was an exam period, so I got set 2 essays instead of that. That's fantastic flexibility, and it's just appreciating how hard the elite athletes do work but can still hold down, I suppose, a degree or education. And for me, if I don't have something to do in between the hours of training, I get a bit bored and a bit just a bit fidgety. I found that education slots in perfectly. Like with my degrees, I was able to do some before training, some after, and it kept me focused.
Rounded.
Yeah, otherwise you focus too much on your sport, and really, like, sometimes going away from it and coming back to it is like you got a fresher mind. So for me, it was getting the right balance.
By way of coincidence, I was in Chicago as an age group athlete, like your uncle, when you won gold in 2015.
Yeah.
I just managed to get back. It was so hot, I just managed to get around in that heat, I think. Do the paratriathlon facilities vary at major events a lot by country?
Yes, and I think what's great with the way that paratriathlon is moving forwards, we are now integrated into most of the World Series events. You'll see the World Para Series events run alongside it. So obviously this year we joined them in Montreal, in Japan. Obviously we were out in Lausanne at the weekend. It was a little disappointing at the weekend in Lausanne, just the way that the lakefront worked. We had 122 para athletes. Compared to the elites where you've got a lineup of maybe 30, 40, having that many transition stands is pretty hard to get us in. The courses have to be adapted a little bit because you can't expect some tandems and hand bikes to get up the hills. Yeah. It's an impossible grind. So at the weekend we were put into not an elite transition. It was a little disappointing because it takes away that feel of you're an elite and you're at a grand final. But at the same time, they do everything within their power to make sure our safety is there first. We have amazing courses, and the atmosphere is actually getting up there. We raced 4:00 on the afternoon, so people weren't asleep, still in bed on an early Sunday morning. They were out and they were cheering. They knew the athletes that they wanted to. Myself and Claire had the biggest amount of cheers going around, so that was a fantastic feeling. And I think next year, after Paratriathlon making its debut in Rio, next year in Tokyo, it's going to be an awesome atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely. And are there countries you've enjoyed competing in most? Are there venues you've gone to that you think?
I think for me, the ones that stick out are the ones where I've obviously won the world title. So Chicago for me has very fond memories. Gold Coast actually last year, where I won my last world title. The atmosphere there was incredible. Australians love their sport anyway, so they were all keen. They were all out there. But then I think, from memory, the best course we've ever had, although there was queries around the water quality in Rio, Copacabana as a setting was fantastic. And normally on a 5k loop in a paratriathlon, you'll pass a crowd. Oh, it's fantastic. Then you're on your own, and you're just working. But because it was on the seafront, the main hub of Rio, there wasn't a break in the barriers. There was the whole way around, and whether they were Brazilian or whatever country they were from, they just would see GBR and they go GBR, and you'll be like, that's great, and it just keeps you going and gives you that bit more extra energy. So yeah, Rio probably for its atmosphere.
And does it frustrate you that sometimes there's that lack of coverage? It doesn't get the coverage it deserves. I'm thinking around Rio footage. Actually, this weekend I struggled to find the coverage I would have liked to have seen of it this weekend as well.
It's very difficult because obviously we have such a broad spectrum of categories, and then female, male. We were racing for over 2 hours with 5 different races going off, so I can understand how difficult it is to cover it. But there are so many people that are keen to watch paratriathlon. In Rio, they did an okay job. The problem is then you've got to be out on speedboats with cameras and stuff, but they did get the finish. They got, obviously, the transitions. They did really well in Japan this year gone. Triathlon Live.
It's a good start.
Yes, it's getting there. Triathlon Live covered pretty much the whole race. They had cameras out on bikes. They were getting the right races, and it's sometimes complicated for people to understand the classifications within it. But I know that Channel 4 have said that they will be covering it next year. Hopefully, it doesn't get the dates moved out there, because I think we've got set days for coverage, which is, again, if we fall outside of those, you may not see it, but it is a start to know that people back home that can't make the trip out to Japan can watch us race.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you talked a little bit about Rio there, and you obviously won silver, which was a fantastic achievement. But heading into the race, many people thought that you were on for gold. Yeah. I guess, what happened?
So I think this is what's fueled me for the next year coming. I swam the wrong way, which It is soul destroying to think of now. I did go in as the favourite and it was mine to take, and I had the most awesome race plan in the world. I was going to take it from the front and hold it the whole way through. Grace, the American, her track background, athletics, she is a phenomenal runner. So my swimming background was to challenge her run. So I knew I had to have a really solid swim, and then I swam the wrong way. And whilst I think back and I gutted, I'm also really proud. It was the one race where I learned something about myself. I didn't panic. I didn't go, oh, it's game over. I thought, you know what, nope, turn around. And by the end of the swim, I had spent a lot of energy, but I got back to second place. Wow. I managed to catch her within the transition. And I like to be out of sight, out of mind on the bike. So if someone can't see me, they don't know where I'm attacking on power, they don't know how much I'm pulling ahead. But Grace knew that if she stayed within 10 seconds of me on the bike, she could outrun me. And I even heard her coach say to her, you are perfect, hold your position. Oh. And so I knew going on to the run that it was only going to be a matter of meters before she would take me. But I crossed the line smiling. I'd still managed to take a medal. Some people may not have taken a medal from that mistake, but yeah, I learnt a lot and been very gracious about it, but it will not happen again next year.
I was going to say, how do you deal with that disappointment? But you can hear in your voice almost that...
Yeah, I think I've learned that do every swim recce, Lauren, and make sure you know the swim course. So, you know, as long as you take something from a failure, you learn from it.
So Ellie Simmons has said in the past that it frustrates her when some of the members of the public tell her you're not a real athlete when they're talking about Paralympics. I wonder if you've had any of that sort of ignorance and criticism at all.
I've actually never experienced that, and I feel very angry that Ellie has had to deal with that. I think there is always that line, and I think it's actually, sorry to say, the older generations that still hold that sort of opinion and mindset. Because I think the one thing that London managed to do, you had the Olympics, and everyone was so excited, it was great, and then it was a bit of a, oh, what do we do now? Then the Paralympics came along, and because Channel 4 worked effortlessly, and the whole country, whether you've got your big brands like Sainsbury's, got behind us, it meant that there was an excellent coverage and atmosphere going into it. And when I would go into schools before London, kids would just stare at my arm, and the questions at the end would be all to do with my arm. After London, I was seen as an athlete, and they didn't care about my arm. They were like, so what do you eat? And how many hours do you train? So the perception changed, and I think the younger generations now don't see it as a problem. And I think, obviously, I know we'll go on to talk about it, but I went on to Strictly. There was some interesting comments on there, to do, you know, that you would on massive national live television. But I think it's been a positive way that disability is moving forward. And if it's the one thing that the Paralympics can do as a movement, whether you have, everyone, I would say, has a disability. Maybe someone's rolled over on their ankle when they were younger, so their walking's hard. You're not disabled, it's just probably quite hard for you to go and kick a football around. Like, everyone's got something that they can't quite do. So I think the Paralympics shows that actually there are no excuses. And that these people go out there, even me, I'm missing one arm, but I can watch a guy with perhaps only one leg, he's not got any arms, swim 100 metres. What's your excuse if you're at home? Yeah. So I think in that sense, the Paralympics is doing a grand job of inspiring a whole nation.
I love that analogy of going into schools and children just seeing you as you.
Yeah, I have had some fantastic questions from kids. They're actually my favourite audience. Like, I've had, how do I brush my teeth? With my left hand and a toothbrush, because they get that, you know, but in their head that was a good question, but I'm like, right, well.
And you mentioned preparations for Tokyo 2020, and obviously recently returned from the test event, which went well. Are you pleased with the result there?
I was astounded with the results out there. I've sort of gone into this season with, I suppose, quite a bit of hope in my abilities to retain titles and race up with the best in the world, but also aware that I had 7 months out. Mm-hmm. My legs weren't quite what they were at the end of last year, but Tokyo itself was really humid, and the heat out there was like nothing you'd ever experienced, especially not for us Brits. It was very different. So we did a lot of work based around heat and humidity chambers. I've been out the country pretty much all of this year, whether it was Lanzarote, Portugal, Florida, we went on a heat and humidity camp. So we were trying to work on cooling systems, because obviously when you run, when you race, your body temperature gets hot. So how are we going to cool that down in an atmosphere that just wants to heat you up? Yeah. So, you know, we did lots of prep around it, trying to get the body adjusted and acclimatised, and it was definitely challenging. I've raced very well, and I've learnt over the years that actually I do really well in heat. Not entirely sure why, I just seem to love it. So I actually had a really good race, worked on cooling systems, whether it's ice packs or maintaining a cool body temperature before you start. But it's definitely something that next year needs to be the main focus, because you can be really, really fit, but fit in heat is a whole nother level. So it's definitely something that me and my coach especially are going to work on.
That's fascinating. And this weekend, silver, you mentioned. Yes. So without giving away your training plans for the next 12 months, but are there key areas that you know that you want to work on now between now and Tokyo?
Yeah, swim, bike, run. Definitely. I'm really chuffed that within a 3.5 month period, I managed to go from having dancer legs to actually being able to put out a decent amount of wattage on the bike. It's not been easy, but I got within 2 seconds of the world title this year. So I'd like to think that with a whole winter's worth of training under my belt, we're going to see me come out fighting and very powerful next year. I think my main focus, probably going to send it more towards getting my swimming back to where it used to be as a swimmer, because I'm capable of much, much faster times. On the bike, just get out there, get some strength back, because I've lost a lot of muscle mass. It was about 6 kg.
Wow.
Which, doing strictly, which I needed, because obviously poor AJ had to lift me, so he was very grateful. But I obviously need that on the bike, so I've got to get that back, and then obviously I need to learn to be able to out sprint Claire. Maybe it won't be down to 2 seconds next year, but so that's definitely sort of the focus on training.
Fantastic, and we wish you well with that. I'm going to move on now to back to last year, as it were, and to Strictly. When were you invited to take part in the show? How did you hear that?
It came around through my management agency, and I was like, well, of course, who wouldn't consider Strictly? I mean, it's one of the best shows ever. So I went along for one of the interviews, and it was Giovanni actually that I had as my little taster session, and it went really, really well. So I said to Taz, as long as I've spoken to obviously national federations, British Triathlon, my own coach, and I can still achieve what I need to achieve in the sport, because that's my main goal, that's my life, that's what my career is, and do Strictly, then yes, I'm game. And my coach said yes. British Triathlon, as long as I delivered, which I did. I brought home the
delivered in Strictly, or delivered in...
Well, I think I delivered in Strictly as well. I mean, I didn't expect to go that far. I thought maybe week 4, 5, that might be it. But then the semi-finals.
Extraordinary, wasn't it? Fantastic.
Yeah, I think both myself... Actually, AJ said to me after that, he was like, I only thought I'd get to week 3. I was like, well, thank you, AJ. And he was like, no, we've had an amazing
And why
journey.
do you think that was? Because that love, the public love and, enthusiasm.
Probably for AJ at the beginning, it was like, oh, gosh, this guy's got one hand. Like, what can I do? And I think most people would have that sort of idea in their head to begin with, is this is going to be challenging. I don't quite know how it's going to go, because it is an unknown. But I think he got to learn about me very quickly and my personality, and how, again, the determination come across. And each and every week that we went out there and performed, we wanted to show that, I have one arm, but I can do everything. There was some challenging weeks, and we got through them. But the one thing that was lovely was we managed to show a whole nation that they should believe in themselves, that they can do everything. And we had such an influx of beautiful messages, whether that was stories, videos, letters, that each and every week that I read them to AJ on a Monday was like, okay, well, this is the focus this week, and if the public love it, then they'll want to see us dance again. So we did it each and every week to make people at home have the biggest smile on their face and believe in themselves.
And that clearly, was hugely powerful.
Yeah, it worked until the samba.
Obviously, you said it was a fantastic opportunity, and who wouldn't say no, but were you inside concerned it would affect you?
Definitely. Not from any point of view other than my sports career. Triathlon's not easy. Triathlon takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of, I suppose, body conditioning. I was going to take 7 months out of my career, a year and a half before the biggest games of my life. Was that a smart decision? Looking back now, yes. I've managed to bounce back off of that. I've been an athlete since I was 11 years old. I've only known sport. So I've learned, actually, there is a whole other world out there, and other people have other problems. Because I used to think, oh, no one knows what it's like to be an athlete and have to race. Well, no, but there's other pressures that I've now realised are in life. And it's opened up my eyes for possibly what I'd want to do in a career after sport. There's so many opportunities out there, and so many things I want to do to grow as a person. So definitely the right decision. But yeah, I don't think I'd do it any later than when I did it, because if I was doing it this year, I wouldn't be able to get my legs back in time.
Well, I was going to move on to that, actually, because I know that Johnny Peacock was before you, and Will Bailey, the table tennis guy, is doing it this year, isn't he?
He is, yes, and I think his personality is going to be amazing on the show. He's funny, but he's also self-confident in himself, and I think it's going to shine across in all of his dances. Will sport a little different to mine. He doesn't necessarily have to go out and do the hours and hours on ends. His is a skill-based sport, so I think he'll be able to get the training in alongside dance training. There was no way I could go and do 3-hour bike session and then dance, whereas I think for Will, I hope he can get as far as he can, but also maintain his training alongside it. So I think it's going to be a great year for Will.
And you touched a little on how appearing on the show has normalised your disability and disability in itself.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was just being on the show, and then when you walk down the street, or, you know, kids were never like tugging on their mum's arm. Mum, that girl's got one arm. It was, Mum, that's Lauren from Strictly. And oh, it's AJ. Like, and it was lovely to all of a sudden, they didn't see it as different. It was just like, oh, well, Lauren was born without an arm. Like, it wasn't unusual. And for kids to, I suppose, not accept disability, but to be, I suppose, normalised to it, means that actually there's no difference between disability and able-bodied anymore. And I think I had so many beautiful messages. Like one lady messaged saying, I've got 2 twin girls and we watched your first dance show on Strictly where you did your waltz, and I said to them, look what Lauren's doing. There is no excuses. You girls can do anything you want to do in your life. Wow. If that was all I managed to achieve, was just inspiring 2 little girls one evening, my job's done.
Crazy,
it was beautiful.
I did cry, I confess, watching your American Smooth, the South Pacific. So it's
loved
family favourite and the most gorgeous dance ever. What do you have a favourite? Are you allowed to have a favourite dance? Do you have a favourite dance?
I thought I was going to like the Latins going into Strictly, because I thought that, like, with the waltz and the awkward head position, I wouldn't be very good. But it actually ended up that I was very good at ballroom and not the other way around. Whether that was AJ, because it's more his area of specialism, I'm not sure. But I loved my Viennese waltz and my American Smooth. They were by far my favourite dances. The Viennese waltz was the first time that I danced and I didn't think about the routine. It was ingrained in me, and I relaxed and I enjoyed it. And I actually still know the routine to this day. Maybe because I did it on tour, I'm not sure. And then the American Smooth was very similar, but just the whole, I had to pretend that I was in love, and I could do that. I couldn't do sexy and sassy. I was awful at that. But I could do the in love, the happy, or the other end of the scale where I was that evil queen and I had to kill AJ. That was a very easy week as well. One or the other.
And you mentioned about your fame and people knowing you in the street. Do you get recognised much more now?
Yeah, pretty much everywhere I go. It's not as much as it is when you're in the middle of Strictly, because obviously people are aware of it. When I was with my parents at the airport in Geneva, it happened. I was in Lanzarote and I got stopped on the bike. It does happen, and people are so positive and they're always happy to say, you know, you're inspirational, you're this. And that is what I want to do throughout my whole life, and everything I do is inspire people, encourage them to do things that they don't think they can do, because actually you can. It's just a mindset. But it's been lovely to not get recognition for necessarily putting in hard work, but for people to know who you are. It is great when you try hard in life. I think with everything, whether it's your parents just recognising that you did well in your school grades, or your grandma's like, oh, look at you. It's just, everyone deserves to get something back from the hard work that they put in.
Absolutely. You were a fantastic ambassador for the Try January campaign we worked on this year. Do you think it's important to use your profile to get more people into triathlon as a sport?
Definitely. If that's the one thing I can do, is be a positive role model. And if that's all that, you know, being in the limelight as I can achieve, is have such a great, I suppose you could say, social media following now, that I can influence. I've got quite a younger girl generation that follow me as well, so I can influence people into different areas of things, or, you know, different ways of looking at things. So the Try January for me, the idea was to, you know, get people to either join my 50,000 was quite a big number, but, you know, if you join my team, that's what it's going to be. But it wasn't about against other people, it wasn't competitive, it was just about you. And speaking from within my own family, my mum and dad did it, and they put it on the wall. My dad is like 168 kilometres, like that's just him in his day life. But when people can see it on the wall and they think, been lazy for 3 days, I haven't done anything, it makes you accountable for it. So making people see that actually triathlon is a sport for everyone, any age, any ability, I think opened up the world of British triathlon, because it is, and it can be in a relay, and, you know, it's just a family oriented sort of sport. So it's one of my passions, obviously, and I was able to help promote it, and we had some great feedback. And hopefully, I'd like to think the campaign's going to run again, because it had a lot of people get involved.
Excellent. And clearly we haven't got to Tokyo yet, but beyond Tokyo, you must contemplate that now. Do you think about another Olympic cycle?
Oh, I'd be even older. I think after each Games I've gone, oh, that's it, I'm retiring. And then about 6 months later, I'm like, no, I'm not ready for that yet. So I don't know how I'll feel after Tokyo. I suppose I've got a huge goal ahead of me and I'm really desperate to bring home that gold medal. So, you know, if I achieve that, I don't know how I feel. Very capable of going to Paris 2024. I'm definitely still got years in me as a triathlete. I've got so much more to learn, even though I've been in it for so long. You never stop learning. But I do have other goals. I'd love to do a doctorate in psychology, so I'd love to become... You did
your master's in psychology after you... No, your master's in business
yeah.
After your
I really realised that I loved psychology, so Dr. Steadman also has a cool ring to it, so that would be one of the motivations. Possibly a business consultancy company as well. I'd like to combine psychology with the sports world, because there is so much to learn from each other. Obviously can bring in disability in that front, so I've got loads of areas that I find really interesting and I want to sort of shape into one. But yeah, there's so many different avenues, because at the same time I'm really sort of loving having the bigger public profile where I can influence people as well. So there's a lot of different avenues that excite me. Like, there's none that I'm going to rule out. So
watch this space.
Exactly, watch this space.
What do you do now to switch off from the intensity of training? So you talked in the past about academics and education. Dance? Are you dancing now still?
My housemate's Colombian anyway, so naturally there's always salsa playing in our kitchen when we're cooking. So I've attended a couple of salsa lessons, and I think once I've settled, and actually what I wanted to do was get back my sports fitness before I continue, but I actually love ballroom. I do want to take ballroom classes, and then maybe I could say, AJ, did you fancy a dance, and show him how it's done one day. But I don't know about that. But at the moment I do a lot of reading. I love reading. I'm quite busy from the spin-offs of all of Strictly, so I'm trying to do quite a lot of campaign work and stuff like that. I've been out of the country a lot. And then the other one that's actually helped me quite recently is trying to get Instagram up and going. It sounds like the simplest of things, and it's a social media platform, but I've tried to actually sculpt it in the way that get pictures in the right way and motivate people and show them what the life of an athlete is, a Paralympic athlete, inspire that way. So that's taken a lot of my time to get the sort of right stories across. I wanted to really shape who I was. So,
and if people want to find you on Instagram, you're at Lauren Steadman?
At Lauren Steadman with 2 N's, because somebody else took Lauren Steadman with 1 N. I mean, oh, come on.
Outrageous.
But yes.
And finally, what advice would you give now, looking back to your 12-year-old self, that girl that was starting out in swimming?
There have been a lot of highs and lows, and so at some point I'd want to shelter myself and say, oh, don't make that one or that one, but each and every one of those hardships has led me to be the girl I am today. And I think the athlete I am, I wouldn't be today and have that fight in me if I hadn't have had to really work hard for it. But I would say to a 12-year-old version of me to always keep going, and that persistence and, you know, determination, it will shine through, and that to always make sure that I do things that I love and don't do things because others have said I should do it. And it's one thing I always say to kids if I go into school, and parents can be there, and I say to them, sorry mum and dad, but make sure everything you do is because you want to do it, and your mum and dad will always support you. Don't feel you have to do it because mum says this. Parents will always push you because that is their job, and that is fantastic. But I think I've always gone through life and I've chosen degrees I wanted to do because they interested me, I loved it, and my sport I love. I don't do it because I have to or because I'm good at it. I do it because I love each and every day challenging myself and having a big goal. So just to be positive and do what you love.
How fantastic is Lauren? Such a joy to talk to and fascinating to hear her story. We wish her well for Tokyo next year and hope she can bring home that Paralympic gold. If you've enjoyed this podcast, you can find out more about all my guests at promotepr.com/gamechangers. Thanks so much to the brilliant team at What Goes On Media who have produced the Game Changers for me. Sam Walker is the executive producer, with Rory Alskery on sound production. The Game Changers. Fearless women in sport.